I've got just a PDF file. It's available. You can either go to my blog site, just go to lumen.org. It's the first post. You can grab it from there. Or if you go to Drupal Camp Colorado, there's a page for the session. You should be able to download it from there. So I've got about 30 slides. There's a fair amount of detail, so please feel free to download it so you don't have to copy or do anything else like that. Just a bit about myself before we get started. I was born and raised here in Colorado. Went to CU Boulder for my undergrad. I was able to spell Ada, and this is not much of an exaggeration, but because of that, I spent a couple years down at the Johnson Space Center. After that, largely again because I could spell Fortran. I spent a few years in Japan. Then I came back to CU Boulder, got my MBA there. Again, largely because I could say the word Nihongo. Was hired out to Silicon Valley. Been out there, I guess, about 10 years. Now I can spell the word Git. I don't know if that's progress or not, and that's why I'm here in front of you today. I've been using Drupal since about 4.6. Unfortunately, Drupal is not my day job, so you all probably have more Drupal expertise than I. But I've been using Git a fair amount over the past year, 18 months, so hopefully I can convey a few things about that. One thing, I thought about making a slide about this, but I hope it goes without saying. Can everybody read this okay? Should I darken it? Or are we cool?
Lights out.
Lights out? Yes? We'll give it a try. Okay. Yeah, I do have some small print. I mean, that's really meant for downloading it. If you want to work through some of the examples, I've got some kind of tiny print there. I guess one thing, it's sort of one notorious thing about Japanese when they get presentations is they're kind of notorious for putting a lot of small print in their presentations. I guess maybe that's a bad habit that I adapted when I was over there. So I've got some of the pages you'll see here, it's got a lot of small print, but hopefully they're useful examples for you. One thing I thought about putting a slide up about this, but hopefully it goes without saying. Everybody, if you're even a semi-serious developer, if you're doing anything more than a throwaway script, you have to do version control of some kind. I mean, if you don't, you are in for a world of hurt. And I mean, like, I worked on a project at my current employer. He tried to put me on a project with somebody that was not using version control. I just said I was not going to write one line of code until I put it first into version control. And if you all don't, hopefully you all ascribe to that, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but I guess now the question is what kind of version control and how to use it. As far as I did want to get into a bit of a history of version control. It started way back in, let's say, 1972 with SCCS. Then RCS, I used RCS quite a bit, say in the, 80s, 90s. It's one nice thing about RCS, it's basically on a Unix system, it's check in, check out, and RCS diff. One thing it's very nice, it's ubiquitous on any kind of Unix system. It's very simple. You just have to pick a file and put it under RCS control. There's not a lot of overhead associated with it. The problem with RCS is that there are blocking issues. I was working at a .com in the late 90s, and we had a team of, say, 4 or 5 folks, and we were using RCS at the time. And I remember there were a lot of times we're saying, hey, can you give up the lock on that file so I can edit it? And so there are some problems associated with RCS. Back in the 1990s, RCS plus some scripting, to a large extent it was Perl scripting and some Bash scripting. But basically CVS started off as just a layer on top of the RCS system. By doing that, by using these scripts to manage the locks and whatnot, now it's much more sophisticated. But you can come up with a concurrent versioning system. And I remember, again, when I was working at that .com, the folks downstairs who were working on the cool next-gen stuff were using CVS. And that, of course, is what Drupal is using right now. I throw in a Rational Clear Case. That's a commercial product. I just throw it in because I'm a bit familiar with it. It's fairly popular. We use that. I did work a couple years at eBay, and we use that at eBay. It's a very big, very capable, very expensive system. I used to, again, in Silicon Valley, I worked for a cheminformatics company, and we use ClearCase. We switched to ClearCase largely because it had this multi-site functionality. And because we had a development group in the United Kingdom, we had a group here, and this again was in the late 90s, but we really, even back then, we had a need to coordinate the work of the projects between multiple sites. Since then, we've moved into more sophisticated distributed revision control. I would say it started with BitKeeper. My current employer, that's what I use on a daily basis, BitKeeper. BitKeeper, it's got a bit of a interesting history. It was actually used by Linus Torvalds when he was doing Linux kernel development. He actually, before he started using BitKeeper, he was just using tarballs and just copying things around. He didn't have a version control system. But he saw BitKeeper and how it worked, and he said that by using it, he was able to really significantly improve his productivity on working on the Linux kernel. Now, BitKeeper is a commercial product. They charge for it, and so a lot of the Linux folks were saying, hey, why are you using a commercial product to control really the core of free software? And so there was a big, big controversy about this. You can read about it in various places. And so finally, Linus, he just said, well, I'm going to create my own distributed version control system using a lot of the ideas and whatnot from BitKeeper. And that's how Git itself was started. One interesting thing, if you listen, Linus has a discussion of Git and how it started, and he used CVS when he was at Transmeta. And his description of, he thought CVS was a terrible piece of software. He said that what you need to do in order to develop a good revision control system is just do everything the opposite of CVS, and you're off to a good start. So as far as other distributed revision control system, there's Monotone, that was an earlier one. Dark, so I've used most of these. When it came down to